Hello, welcome back to the Cash PT Lunch Hour podcast. This is your host, Aaron LeBauer. Today, my special guest is Raef Granger. Raef and I got
Yes.
connected about 4 or 5 years ago. So, welcome to the show. I want to tell how we got connected. Raef is a lawyer by trade, but like most of my friends that I went to college with who were lawyers, isn't really practicing much law anymore and finding that probably his degree has helped him understand people in very different ways. But he's also been a small business owner. We were talking before the show how he is a podcaster with like millions of downloads. Is
Millions
that
of
correct?
downloads. Yep. Isn't that
Um,
crazy?
Talking about games, European style gamings like Catan and Dungeons and Dragons and etc. So,
Yeah.
Raef, welcome to the show. It's exciting to have you here, and I'm always excited to learn something new about people.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we got connected through a real close colleague of mine. She lives here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and she's like, "You got to talk to Aaron." And when I started going down my coaching path, just not for a particular reason. I'm not a PT. I'm not looking to do cash-based PTs, but to just connect. And so you and I have been chatted, occasionally over the years, and are like-minded. And you told me about your podcast, and I'm like, yeah, I'll be on. Have me
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
So
awesome. Well, it's awesome to have you here. Can you share a little bit about and like who do you help right now, and like what are you helping people do? And then we'll dive back into like how you got there.
yeah, I'm happy to. And if I seem looking at you strangely, there is an audio delay where you go silent, but then all your words catch up. So if I'm
Oh,
ever a little bit behind, that's why.
yeah. If it's not matched with my mouth, that might be one thing. But if it's like that, it's usually the internet.
It's the internet for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, who I've been helping recently are business owners or people that are what I call quasi business owners. So like loan originators, financial advisors, real estate. They might not own their own real estate agency, the whole thing, but they're pretty much in business for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been in business for a while, 6 to 10 years. They typically have, either 0 employees or like 8 employees, and they're successful.
Yeah.
They're busy, but they're not happy. Their business has sort of took hold of them and is running their lives instead of the other way around. And one of the most common things I hear is like, I don't know what I need to do, Rafe, but I need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know how you're going to help me. They're like, trust me, I've read all the books, I've tried. I don't know how you're going to help me, but help me. I'm drowning, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's my primary
Yeah.
person.
That's awesome. Was that you at some point? Did you struggle with something like that in your
No,
law practice, or how did you get to like
no.
solving this problem?
I did suffer from burnout, so
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to think I'm like, perfect. I definitely got burnt out about halfway through my legal career, took a little
Mm-hmm.
sabbatical, came back and did Law Office 2.0, and boy, did I learn a lot. Getting to do it twice was like
Yeah.
really awesome. Um, no, what happened is I just have this ability and desire I'll get these epiphanies where I'll say, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I
Mm-hmm.
was driving in my car, and I was primarily what we call the consumer bankruptcy attorney. So I would help people file for bankruptcy, save their homes. I loved it. I loved helping people. It was real good work. Our bankruptcy system, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions that goes beyond the concept of this podcast for that. But believe me when I say I was helping people and I really liked it. But after about 22 years, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well, I want to work with my business clients more. But they don't want to pay a lawyer. Lawyers
Right.
are expensive. And so I was like, maybe I can work with them in their business and just make their business better. That was the idea,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing how or why I even have the credibility to do that. And so as fortuitous as it was, one of my methods that I now teach is like, you got to go out and have connections. And I didn't know this was a method, but I've learned to just, when somebody says, go have coffee with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
like Carrie said to me, you should have coffee with Aaron. I'm like, sure. It just leads to things. So I was having coffee with a colleague of mine. She ran an estate planning practice, still does. And she's like, well, you're going to be a coach, Rafe? I'm like, I guess. And she's like, will you coach me? And I was like,
Yeah.
what am I going to teach her? We're the same age. We know all the same things. But she's like, well, but you've had your practice for 20 plus years. I've only had my practice for 5 and it's killing me. Paralegals are driving me crazy. I can't, go home at night without stress. I can't take a vacation. The thing's going to implode. In my head, I was like, yeah, absolutely. And in my head, I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm a
Right.
fraud, basically. But sure enough, when I got there, I saw a lot of things that I guess I had just learned and taught myself throughout the years. and had actively learned. I always believed I was a business person who happened to practice law,
Mm-hmm.
not a lawyer who, you know what I mean? And
Right.
so I'd go to places like how to work with employees, how to hire, how to fire, not for lawyers, just for business people, how to read a purchase and loss, P&L, how to do QuickBooks simply, whatever. And so I had gathered a bunch of knowledge more than I thought. And then the interesting thing is I went to a yoga training. I don't know if did I tell you this story?
No, you have definitely not told me this one.
All right. So I went to this yoga training. My wife's a yoga teacher and owns a yoga studio by trade. And she's like, you got to go to this thing. It's called Journey into Power by Baron Baptiste. And I'm like, honey, I'm not a yoga teacher. Like, I don't want to be a yoga teacher. I like practicing yoga, but I don't. She's like, no. It'll help your business. I'm like, how is this yoga training going to help my business? So I went to this training. It was out in Sedona, New Mexico. It was a week-long immersion, and it was yoga and it was meditation. I'd never meditated before. And it was this stuff called inquiry, where they would pose these questions to us. There's about 85 of us. And then we'd break off in little small groups. They'd be like, hey, go sit with your journal, answer these questions, sit with your small group, discuss, and then come back. And then when you came back, if you volunteered, they'd drill you. They'd get into your stuff. And you'd be watching these people up at the microphone, and sometimes I'd volunteer, but they're just having these moments and I'm sharing, I'm like, that's me. Like, they're talking on the microphone about what they're struggling with. And I'm like, that's me.
Yeah.
Well, I had this epiphany halfway through. I was like, if I took the same method, subtract the yoga, did meditation and inquiry work with business people, they'd eat this up. So I came back home and I pitched a workshop. I had 10 people show up and we meditated for the first 10 minutes. Aaron, I wasn't trained in meditation. I have only meditated 8 times before that, but I'm like, I have a voice. I can speak a narrative. So we meditated for 10 minutes. I was waiting for them to throw their pen, go, I want my money back. What's this crap? How come you're not teaching me how to sort my in bin? And they were like, that was the most peaceful 10 minutes of my life. That was one. And they shared, and I was like, oh my gosh, you don't have to be this weird yogi to like this stuff. Regular people like it too. It's kind of the thought I had. Right. And so that kind of launched me on my journey. Those 2 events.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's really cool. I got so many questions. And 8 years ago, I did a Baptiste inspired training. So it was led by one of the affiliate studios here. Cool. And I'm a Baptiste, not certified. It's called Baptiste inspired yoga teacher, because I didn't do it through Baron Baptiste. I did it through one of the affiliate studios. So,
oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But you're basically trained in the Baptiste methodology then.
Yeah. And I taught it for 2 years, 2.5
years. No kidding.
Probably. Yeah.
So you got to go when they've got Journey into Power back up live, level 1.
I know. It was on my short list of things to do this fall, but that didn't happen for 19 reasons.
Yeah. No, I fought it for so many years. And anybody listening, you don't have to be a yogi. I wasn't a yogi. You just have to be a person. And I mean, you do a lot of yoga, when you're there. But
the inquiry and the method and the kind of philosophy, it changed the way that I was able to help other people. And it found its way in my course, the Cash PT Blueprint. I mean, so if anyone's gone through it and been a Baptiste teacher, they'll see those pieces, but most people won't. But it's about like being open for opportunity, like being a yes, right? It's
being
about,
a yes.
Self-reflection and discovery. So can you share a little bit about, like, I'm sure there are people listening that are like, I don't know, what is inquiry? Like, can you share a little bit about like what that is and what's like maybe the number one question that people can ask themselves, right?
Yes, absolutely. I do start with that. There's a methodology that Baron Baptiste created that we're trained in, and it's called Be a Yes. I might be butchering some of it, not perfectly off the poster, but I think of it as Be a Yes, which I'll describe. And it'll be drop what you know. Mm-hmm. And then Ready Now is Baron, but I changed that to a question, which is what will happen if you don't. Right. So day 1 of my master classes is I'm going to say, hey guys, what are you a yes for? And they look at me like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what are you about? What do you want to have happen in your business and in your life? And then that's a really good prompt. And then they journal that. What do they want? And so that's kind of where I'll start, is I'll say, what's happening that you don't want to have happen? what's not happening that you do want to have happen. And that's sort of where I start. And then they journal about that. I just give them 7 minutes and they journal. And then we'll say, all right, now what I want you to do is what thought, belief, preconceived idea is in the way that you need to drop. You don't have to know how to drop it. You just have to drop it. You just have to see it and go, I'm going to drop that. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to want to. You have to want to. But oftentimes we don't believe it. Well, I can't get that out of my head. Well, you don't have to today. You just have to see it and drop it. And then the third question I'll ask them is, what will happen if you don't?
Right.
And that usually, man, that gets people when they start to think about that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, Aaron, you probably find this in your practice is, we don't like to go there. We don't want to go to that scary thought of what will happen if we don't.
Mm-hmm.
But I encourage my business people to go there because you want to examine it. You want to see it. I believe we want to lift up the rock and look at the creepy crawlies that we're scared of. And because then once we see it, we can do something.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
my philosophy.
Once we recognize it and admit to ourselves that it's actually there, we can do something. Wouldn't you agree? Right.
Yes.
Because we can uncover the rock, right? But I think Barron says remove the rocks, right?
Right.
And but if we look at something and we don't like it, we can ignore it and cover it back up.
Yes. Yes.
One of the other, this is awesome because I didn't plan on this.
Yeah, I was going to say, guys, I didn't know Aaron and I didn't know we shared this Baptiste philosophy.
So one of the trainings I've been doing this year is through the Warrior's Way. It's Garrett J. White. And he talks a lot about, I think you'd like it. It's mostly like, and the way he's marketed is like married businessmen, and so it's been really great. And as we're talking about this, I'm seeing some of the patterns and consistencies across. He speaks about certain things in a different way, but one of the things he talks about is, just you have to stop lying to yourself. And Barron Baptiste talks about more of like defying the lie, right? We tell stories. So where are we lying? And going through that this year, I've been seeing more of where like maybe I'm lying to myself about things, but also where other people, as I learn more about myself, I see where other people are lying to themselves about their business or about their wants, desires, etc.
Yes.
Do you see that too in people you work with? Like where they're just they're basically just like, they're not lying on purpose, but they're lying about like what they want or an outcome, or it's like their story's getting in their way because they can't admit the truth of what they really want.
Yeah. I see that. It doesn't come across to me as they're lying to themselves, because that to me suggests they have some knowledge that it's there to then to be able to lie about it. It's more they don't allow themselves to even look there.
Right.
Or they're feeling like they got this sense in their breast that they're like, man, life's just not turning out the way I thought it would, but I have all these clients, I'm busy. So who am I to complain? I can't complain. It's like they get stuck there. Yeah.
And I think it's like two different sides of the very same thing, and articulating how they work together. But I think what you're saying is true. It's like, I'm not lying. Like a lie would be, I know it's wrong, versus like, I can't even see it.
Right.
And I see it come up for people. It's like, I'm not even willing to listen to it. Right. I'm not even willing to listen to my intuition or insight about something. So I'm just, because it might be too painful. So I'm going to avoid it. And that becomes the lie.
Yes. 100% see that.
Right.
100% see that.
Why do you think we do that?
Why do we do that to ourselves?
Yeah.
I think it's fear.
Yeah.
I think it's just what? Fear-based. Fear of failure. I never really understood that fear of success. Sometimes I wrestle with that one. Like, what is that even? How can we fear success? So if you have any insight on that, I'd love to hear that. But to me, I think it's fear of failure, fear of looking bad in front of others, fear of letting other people down. Like, oh, well, if I start this business and I fail, what if I have to file bankruptcy? Like, what an embarrassment. And what will my spouse think? And what will my parents think? And I just think it's fear-based.
Yeah. Why? Why do you think like, what? And I know you're not a psychotherapist, but it's like, and maybe that's a better question, but why are people so afraid of doing something new that, really the only upside, I mean, the downside might be filing bankruptcy. It's not like,
which I'm here to tell you, by the way, is super easy,
yeah,
not as embarrassing as you think, and gives you a great fresh start. Like,
yeah,
true. Anyway, but go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like,
Why?
if that's the worst thing, it's not like, like the upside could be so much greater,
Huge.
bigger, right? If we just
That's a
take a
great
chance.
question. That's one of my, I have a lot of faults, trust me, but I think someone said to me, Rafe, you're fearless about launching these businesses and things. And I'm like, no, that's not it. I don't even pause to think about the fear. I have this, what I call childlike naivete, where if somebody's like, Aaron, if you're like, hey, let's go off into the jungle and explore, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Now I know enough to like, all right, probably need some supplies. If I get bit by a snake, might want to need some snake bite. But other than that, I'm off.
Yeah.
Rather than like, oh my gosh, I could get lost, I could freeze to death, I could die or whatever. I don't even think about it. So I would think maybe a lot of people have more forethought, which I think is a good thing, but it might get in their way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not this ability for me to be like, oh my God, I'm petrified I do it. Like when I'm like, I don't want to do bankruptcy anymore, I'm going to start my coaching practice. I didn't even dawn on me to be like, well, what will happen if I don't? I guess I was like, well, I'll just get a job as an attorney again or something.
Yeah.
So I think we think what fear is based in the future, I think, right? So we're thinking about all, and I think this is just me. I'm sure I've heard this somewhere, but we as humans, I think we're designed to be like, don't go there, don't touch that, don't taste this, don't eat that, don't go on the grass. We're very designed to be afraid for survival.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gets translated into business scenarios where we're just don't. But we forget to think of the positive, like you were just saying, of the do. Yeah, but what if I do?
Right.
That's
And
why that third question works for me.
yeah, absolutely. But that's why, like, right. So it's people are motivated by, going towards pleasure and away from pain. But if we are only like wired to think about like, what's the problem that might encounter if I have a successful business, right? The fear of success is, what's the if I do this right, what's the problem I'm going to encounter? It's just all the problems of what happens if it works, and then what happens if the problems if it happens if it don't. But if we're doing some inquiry or journaling, we're writing about and putting words to the things that we want.
Yes.
Which is really the primary focus, right?
And you just said something that hit with me. I think a lot of people, yes, we're wired to go towards pleasure and avoid pain. But what I'm noticing is I think people are getting stuck in just avoiding pain and they're not going for the pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
The pleasure somehow has become, oh, if I'm avoiding pain, that's the pleasure.
Right.
And it's like, no, it's not. Go get that fruit, go get that juicy peach, or, go towards the pleasure. Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
I see that with our, like, even like our patients, like, to relate this to physical therapists here who are, in a clinic. It's like, people are motivated right now. It's like, well, they're not in the gym, or the next year's coming up. It's like, the problem's going to go away. Like they're not even thinking about, well, how do I become better, faster, and stronger? Now that I'm 45 or I'm 47, I feel better, faster, and stronger than I ever have, except not on a bicycle, because I'm not training for that, but as a body. But our patients are focused on just avoiding the pain and waiting for it to go away, but I'm not willing to go towards what might even be better, might be possible. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, I want to hear more about, because it dawned on me that where I'm maybe dealing with people that are 8 to 12 years into their business journey,
Mm-hmm.
you're dealing with people that are working for the wage earner. And I don't mean that in a prerogative way, but just, they're earning a wage and they have to shift from that big leap into working for themselves. Am I correct? That that's your
majority of people I work with are in like 0 to 5 years of business, and it's
0 to 5 years. Yeah.
Yep. And a lot of them,
that's a huge, that can go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of them do struggle with that shift in mindset from employee to business owner, and they go from employee to self-employed. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. The fear of like that concept of the regular paycheck versus now I got to make my own way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that's one of the biggest things that people struggle with, I think. It's like going from employed to self-employed to business owner. And is there something different that some of the people you're working with, if they've been in business for themselves for 10 years, struggle with differently?
Yeah, I would say that's behind them. My main populace of people are like, Yeah, I'm in existence. Don't ask me how. I mean, but the phone keeps ringing, and I keep, sometimes they'll wake up with cold sweats that like, oh, it's going to turn off. But I've been through the journey long enough to know like it just doesn't turn off.
Right.
It just gets busier, if anything.
Are they still tied down to doing all the work themselves?
That's what a lot of my people are shifting towards. They
Yeah.
either want to grow 5x or 8x in what they're doing, or they're so busy with the day-to-day being the technician that they aren't making the money that they want to make, but they're working 75 hours.
Right.
And so yes, a lot of them will come in saying, I want to work on the business, not in the business, that classic phrase.
Yeah.
And that's what's so funny, Aaron, and you'll understand because we speak the same language. And sorry for the people listening, you'll have to hear of Aaron and Raef part 2. Well, I wanted to have you on my podcast, but I have like no listeners compared to the other one. So I didn't want to waste your time, but maybe we'll do part 2 on my podcast.
Right.
But I lost my train of thought where I was going with that, but it'll come back to me.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I'm good at, talking about different things. So what is, I was gonna say my jab would be, so they're just stuck billing people $275 for a 15-minute email and not getting other people to do it for them as lawyers.
Oh, you mean the people that I'm working with?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
the
yeah.
internet.
Oh yeah.
No, because they're not lawyers. A lot of people I work with, like I don't actually even have any lawyers in my group. So they're more, no, it would be more, they got successful because they were good at what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the beginning, they could manage that years 1 through 3.
Right.
But then that exponential issue when all of a sudden 1 tells 2, 2 turns to 4, 4 turns to 8, 8 turns to 16. When they start to get upwards of the clients that they can't personally manage, their next reaction is, this is like year 3 through 5. They go, well, I got to hire people.
Right.
So they just hire somebody, but they don't know how to hire. They don't have to look for the right traits. They don't know about culture. They don't even know what they want for culture. They just hire the bookkeeper that they think is going to impart their knowledge from their brain. They're going to go, oh, USB download into employee. I will have perfect employee. And then next thing you know, they've got 5 employees that aren't doing anything they want them to do. So they're still just as busy. They don't know how to manage and they don't know how to delegate typically.
Right. It's probably, I would say from my experience working with people, it's probably the delegation that's the sticking point, or or the lack of systems versus the hiring people rather than building a system. Right. The system is delegated and it has delegation built into it.
Yes.
And right.
Yes. And I would say the work culture, they have people who theoretically can do the job, but they don't do the job in the way the owner wants it done. So they didn't think of the culture or the training or what does it look like? What does my business look like? What level of customer service is acceptable? What level isn't? And so all that time they want to save is now just managing, which isn't even going effectively. And so they're making even less money. And then so they have to scramble to do the client work to get paid.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the people who have climbed out of it, my people who have climbed out of that have taken the time to be able to step back, take that fear, that's their scary fear. Is, oh my gosh, if I'm going to go from 80% client work down to just 10, how am I going to pay the bills?
Right.
But that's what we work on, that gap, to be able to build their systems and their employee culture to do what they need to be done.
That's awesome. That's so dope. That's so dope. So I want to go back to something that we started on. I had a question early. You were saying that how could you help someone who already has a business and maybe has been in business for 5 years, and you said, oh, but I was able to see all these different things going on, in her business, right? Would you say that you don't, as a business coach, the benefit isn't that always that you're doing something different or something new? You can just put some outside eyes on people's problems and give them a different perspective.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that's exactly right. Like, it's not revolutionary. It's not anything other people haven't known or done. What I learned is that we each know different things than other people know. So like, I think everybody knows what I know, but they don't. And they know all sorts of things that I don't know. And so that's all it was, I had figured out a way to work my calendar, for example, that would work harmoniously with my life, my family, be able to get billing done. my billable, this is back when I was a lawyer, billable work done, be able to tell clients no, whatever it was. But the lawyer I was working with, she had different skill sets. And so she didn't have that systementation in place. And so I'm like, well, the first thing we need to do is get your calendar straightened out. Like, to me, it was as plain as day. But then it dawned on me like, well, no, she just knows different things.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that helps me the most is just like having someone else who understands what's in my brain, in my business, look at it and go, oh yeah, you're doing everything right. Try this one thing, see what happens. I'm like, that's just like, that's worth every penny for me.
It's worth gold.
Yeah.
And like, I have a coach, I have 2 coaches that I work with to help me see what I don't see, and to get me to places where I might not want to look. And he asks me questions and all that. And we just don't know.
What I'm going to ask another question about this, but I kind of feel like I know the answer, but I'm like, what? Okay. But why would people hesitate to get a business coach or a life coach or someone to help them with their stuff?
Well, I seem to have encountered 2 types of potential clients. There's the people that, again, they're scared. I don't think they want to admit that there's a problem. I don't think they want to admit that they're the problem. I don't want to think they want to admit that they don't know. So they just suffer. In my mind, they suffer needlessly. But then there's the second type. I guess there's 3 types. And then there's the second type that they're like, yeah, I'm a wreck. I need help. And they're actively looking and they get help.
Yeah.
And then I've encountered a third business person where I might look at them and say, man, they could go from A to C if they just did B. But that's me just being judgmental, not knowing anything. And they are happy or they appear to be happy. In other words, they're not suffering. They're just doing what they do. And they've achieved whatever it is they want to achieve, I guess.
Yeah. Do you think that, people that are highly educated or sometimes have more difficult time feeling like asking questions, asking for help, getting other people to look at what's going on? Because we spent our whole time in school studying on our own in a cubicle or a hidden location in the library, doing it all really ourselves. And
I think
getting A's.
Lawyers, yes. I think lawyers are very difficult to market to because of that phenomenon. Like we learn at such a high level of understanding how to get answers in, frankly, just telling judges and people and clients what to do. Sometimes they're not very good at listening. That's why I don't particularly try to market to them or try to get them in my, I wouldn't turn one away.
Yeah.
I don't particularly go, I'm a lawyer, I'm going to create lawyers master classes. But that's again stereotypical. So I guess if there's classes of people out there that are used to that level of thinking, it could find that. But my general answer would be no. I'd say most people, it just depends on their personality.
Right.
If they're coachable or not coachable. Those are the words I use.
What makes someone coachable and willing to be able to learn and grow?
Coachable to me means you're open to hearing criticism. If you don't want to, you're open to hearing feedback that you might not like to hear. You're willing to change. So if somebody says something to be like, Raef, you need to listen more or something. And I go like, my wife says that to me. She's like, you're very coachable. Like she can tell me something and I'll be like, oh, I didn't know I was doing that. Okay. Let me evaluate that, even though it could hurt a little,
Right.
So I'd say willingness to learn. Here's what not coachable looks like is, I have some people that I like a lot. They're not coachable in that, well, at least they seem to listen, but they don't do. But then when they come back around and they're still suffering from the same problems as the coach, I'm like, well, you didn't do the 3 things you said you were going to do. Like, well, I don't know why you'd think the result would be different. Like, let's say it's suffering with an employee that's driving them crazy, and the answer is do X and they just refuse to do X, but they're like, they report the same suffering again. Like, that's always curious to me.
Right. Is that the Einstein quote that says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result?
Different result. Yeah, exactly. And I'm guilty of it. Yeah. And you're guilty of it, I'm sure. And we all have our blind spots. And I'm sure I'm not coachable in some areas for sure. But yeah, I guess I interview people before I coach them. So there's no like just passive way to come in. So that's one of the things I'm looking for.
Right.
in that interview is, are they coachable even within that interview? And trust me, I've had people that in the interview, they're not coachable.
Yeah.
And I'll just
How do
say
you
to them,
know, like in the interview, like what's the key, or what's the, and I'm
um,
asking this for like my personal, you know, uh, learning, like
yeah,
what's the key thing?
the key thing would be like, I might be say something like, "Hey, Aaron, you open to exploring, what inquiry work could do for you?" And the answer might come back like, "No, you don't understand. It's not the inquiry work that I need. It's I need help with this X, Y, and Q." So I'm like, "That's interesting. I offered a solution, but your answer automatically was, well, no, that won't work."
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I
Mm-hmm.
might, maybe they didn't hear me. So I might say something like that. Well, Aaron, I'm offering you a potential solution. I don't know if it'll work for you, but perhaps in evaluating these questions. Now, Raef, you don't understand. The issue's this or something. So then I'm either not the right fit because I don't understand. Like I shouldn't even say they're not coachable. It might just be I'm not the right coach
Right.
because I'm speaking in a way that they're telling me I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll begin to say, well, I might not be the right, not in an egotistical way, but I'll be like, Aaron, I don't know if we should work together because already in this meeting, I don't feel like I've been effective.
Right. Right.
For you.
I get it. What's interesting is, and going back to what we were talking about before, like inquiry, and like, how do you be a yes and what's possible? Like the first 25,000 times I heard that, and I was like, what are you talking? Like, what are you talking about? I'm just doing some yoga. I'm here to do yoga. Okay, be a yes. I'm like, what are you up to? I'm like, oh, I'm just, doing my thing. Like, I'm like, that's so vague. But, sometimes, but it kept me guessing, right? It kept me trying to figure out what it was. And then I feel like I figured it out, and it's really difficult to explain. Do you have any insights on like, like what is it that, people should be up to, and what is that hell does that mean?
That's funny because the first thing that came to my mind is what I call yogi speak,
Right.
which is sometimes there's some really trained answers to that of like, I'm open to being one with myself, and I am the light, and I'm going to be the light for all. And I sort of go, ugh, and like want to fall over. So no, I think the answer would be like, yeah, what are you up to? My answer to your question would be like, I guess I would just, there is no answer. It would be, I would journal it and see what comes out,
Right.
including looking at it and being like, I don't know how to answer that question. What am I up to? Like, this is what I would journal. I'd be like, I don't know.
Right.
What a ridiculous question. I don't know. I guess I'm up to getting the Christmas tree. Like that's how my journaling goes. And then through that sort of open narrative, all of a sudden, a page and a half later, something kind of popped out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's it. The question itself is just answering the question, right? The goal is
good.
just to answer the question, not to have an answer.
Ooh, that's really deep. Yes, right? That's well said. That's right? Really good. Yes, the goal is to answer the question.
Right.
Or even just work on answering the question.
Yeah. The cool thing about yoga is, well, it's the goal isn't to answer the question, it's answering the question, right? Not to have an answer.
Not to have an answer.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
but really we're trained to have an answer. Like you got a back pain or a legal problem. Like, well, here's the answer. And this is the reference that says what to do. And, and I was saying the cool thing about yoga is I'm in Baptiste yoga. It's very vigorous. It takes a lot of energy and concentration. And someone's ask you this question in the yoga practice. And it's great because feel like you're in your body and you're not, my mind's not all as far I'm not on Mars when I'm doing yoga. I might be on Mars when I'm sitting on the couch. And I'm in my body and trying to go, wow, that's like, I don't know, what the fuck, but it is, the answer is in answering the question, not the answer itself, I think.
And this might be of value to the audience listening. I didn't develop this theory, but I adapted it to law practice, which is called client-centered therapy, but I called it client-centered lawyering, which was developed by Carl Rogers. So I don't want to steal who did it, who's an American psychologist. And his premise is that the person has the answer to their own questions themselves. And the role of the therapist is to guide them to it. Well, I remember as a lawyer, I was taught to dispense law. So somebody would come in and they'd be a candidate for a bankruptcy. And I would say, hey, Aaron, good news. You're a candidate for a bankruptcy. Here's why. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's what it'll cost. It'll do X, Y, and Q for you. And they would sort of be like, okay, but they weren't really happy or satisfied, or they didn't really do much of the same things I suggested that they do to make their
Mhm.
life easier or nothing. Well, when I switched to client-centered lawyering on that, I'd be like, so Aaron, what are you, most concerned about? And well, I'm really concerned about losing my house. Now, I know the math, they're going to lose their house. Like the math of it is they're going to lose their house. In the olden days, I would say, I'd just say, look, you're going to lose your house, but don't worry about it. Like you can get another house. A house is just a house. Well, that didn't make them feel good at all. Client-centered therapy version was like, yeah, Aaron, I got to tell you, the math of it is that you will, but you know, I'll fight for you if you want to go with it. Like, I don't think we'll have a good result, but I'm there for you,
Yeah.
And then what I learned is when they were ready to let the house go. And I wasn't the enemy. I was their savior. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
do anything differently. But it was just in the way I spoke to them,
Right. Oh, that's awesome.
made a
That's
big
important.
difference.
So you became part of their team rather than the person dispensing bad news.
Yeah, I still dispensed the bad news, but I didn't tell them anything. I'd let them experience their bad news well,
Mm-hmm.
I told them the bad news, but I didn't say, it'll be okay. Don't worry. You'll get a new house within 3 years. Da, 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 da. I just let them go through that journey themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting and is that one of my dad's mentors, Eugene Stead, he's a physician that started the physician's assistant program at Duke University. So
Oh, neat.
old school, but he has this little blue book. And one of his sayings in the book is that, your patient, if you talk to them long enough, they'll give you the diagnosis. Like people will tell you what's wrong
Yes.
if you get them to talk, about their problem. Right. And then you can help them come to the conclusion of what they need to do. Or like as a doctor, I can help. All I got to do is talk to someone and see them walk. And I know what the problem is. I don't need an MRI to tell me what's happening on the inside of their body, just because what's happening on the outside is the thing. And that's the physical therapy part of me. But it's the similar thing where I'm getting the patients or customers or clients to talk about their problem and why it's important. And then we get in alignment with them.
And that's what, for anybody listening to this who's like, I want to open my own PT practice. That's what I learned as a lawyer. People want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They're not hiring you for your knowledge, believe it or not. I thought they were as a lawyer. Oh, they're hiring me for my knowledge. No, they were hiring me to be heard, listened to, and cared for. And the knowledge part was second.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
awesome.
that's the answer. People will flock to you over time when the word gets out. They're like, this, that PT really listened to me,
Right.
really heard what I was saying.
Right. Or the lawyer didn't charge me for every email and phone conversation. I
Right.
think we talked about this when we chatted a few weeks ago, right? It's like the difference between charging me for every email versus like, hey, it's just going to be $5,000 to do this thing for you.
Yes. The micromanage. Well, that's what's funny is that I thought in the bankruptcy example, they paid upfront. It was just a flat fee. There was no hourly. But I used to say, look, it's going to save you money if they would just listen to me to be like, don't worry, you're going to lose the house. Why? What? Don't make me fight it for 8 months. That's going to cost you more.
Yeah.
But I realized they had to go through their journey and they paid more and they were happy. Mm-hmm. I imagine it might be the same thing for PTs. People might be there like, gosh, this person's treatment doesn't need to be 24 months. I'm just making stuff up. Yeah. It only needs to be 12. But I would argue flip that on its head, not because you're a money grubber, but because like, hey, if the person's, if you're listening to them and they're going to go through their journey at their pace, definitely charge for it is what I would say.
Yeah.
How they charge, they learn from you. But yeah, it was funny. I made more money when I listened to them when before I thought I was saving them money and I didn't do it for the money. Mm-hmm. That's the funny part.
Well, that's where it comes down to having an analytical conversation versus going with the emotional why of the customer and patient client. Right.
And it's what they want. At least that's what I found.
Yeah.
Is it the same for PT?
Yeah, patients? In a way, it turns into different things. Like if someone would come to see us, say, "Hey, well, I want," where I find that the one-to-one analysis would be someone might come to me and say, "Aaron, I have a prescription for physical therapy 3 times a week, hot packs, leg lifts, and ultrasound." And I'm gonna be like, I'm not your guy. But if I said I am your guy, that person would come to see me. They might not pay my cash rates because they don't understand why they have to pay cash rates when they could get that for a copay down the street. And where it really comes out is more of it's not about the person when we're onboarding patients and interviewing them. It's not about their body part or their recovering from the injury. It's what those things are keeping them from doing. Right. That's really important. It's not even just, can I get back to CrossFit? It's why is CrossFit important, or why is yoga important? It's because I'm strong. That allows me to be strong, confident, and a good role model for my kids. So if I find that out, now that's the motivator. It's not the activity or the body part. And that's where most people miss. And they lose money, is that they're just going after the body part.
And is there a big push? Because to me, I think cash-based PT is brilliant. I think the doctor model is horrible. I think insurance, trust me. Oh, by the way, do you know what class of people don't get insurance? Lawyers, right? We could have been paid by third-party insurance 100 years ago, and we all said no. Now they hate us when we get made fun of at cocktail parties, because what do lawyers ask for? Money up front, retainer. Right. Where's the retainer? Where's the money up front? And it gets made fun of and whatnot. But people want the service that they want, and if it's at a fair price, I think they'll pay for it. And so to get disconnected from insurance and that whole rigmarole is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Period. It's the triangular relationship, and no one wins in those usually.
That's right. I mean, I had my own problem that I went to see Carrie, our common connection. She solved it in like 2 visits. Yeah, it was worth 8 times what I paid cash up front on the Barrelhead. Yeah. Everybody was telling me shoulder, shoulder, shoulder. She's like, not your shoulder, it's your neck. And here's what we're going to do to fix it. And I was like, really? That's it? And I did it, and it worked.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she had time to probably sit and chat with you and look through your whole body, or more than just your shoulder.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then I became a huge advocate for her. Right. Yeah. I'm like, she healed me. She healed me. So even if she didn't get 12 visits, which she didn't prescribe, I think she prescribed 3. I did 3. But my point is, anyway, I think it's a brilliant model.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad, and
as a consumer of it
too. Yeah. That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. Raef, we're about out of time. I could probably sit and chat with you for another hour, but
I feel the same way.
We'll say that for another day. If someone wants to get in touch with you or find out more about what you're doing, what you're up to, where do they find you?
So the easiest way would be to go to raefgranger.com, and that's spelled RAEF as in Frank, GRANGER. You can email me, raef@raefgranger.com. And my third place, I'm not a Facebooker, but I do have Twitter. You can find me at Raef Granger.
Awesome.
That works.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
If y'all are on Twitter, like I haven't been on Twitter in a little while other to check out like news lately. But shout us out on Twitter at Aaron LeBauer. Let us know what your number one insight is from this episode, and tag us over on Twitter and we'll retweet you.
Yes.
Let us know you're there.
Yeah.
Raef, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome. And I don't ever have a script, but we went into a conversation that I haven't been able to have with anyone else. So on the show. So this is really valuable to me. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I'll make good on that offer to come over to raefgranger.com, and we'll have you over there. And if people want to hear more about this Baptiste thing, they can listen there.
Perfect. And I'd be happy to be interviewed about playing Dungeons and Dragons in the middle of nowhere on a Moshav, Israel, with nothing else to do. And we play all day long.
So we'll have to get you on the D6 generation podcast.
Yeah, I'm not a super master, but I've had my experiences, and it's some fun stories probably.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah. Awesome,
right.
man. Well,
thanks, Aaron.
Appreciate you so much. And you guys are listening to the Cash PT Lunch Hour, and it's been Aaron LeBauer, Raef Granger. And here's what I'm going to tell you to do. Go be a yes for something huge, and we'll see you on the next episode.